My name is Candace Higgins, and I'm with the Nocturnal. Guys, here we have award-winning Hildur Guðnadóttir. She is the composer for A Haunting in Venice. How did I do with your name? That's the first question.
Pretty good. That was pretty impressive.
Okay, thank you. Could you give us a pronunciation just to make sure everyone at home can say your name correctly when addressing you?
Right. Okay. You can have a go at that. So my name is Hildur Guðnadóttir.
All right, there you go. So tell me how you first got involved with the project A Haunting in Venice.
So Kenneth approached me and asked if I was interested in joining. That's pretty much how that worked. And he was I of course have known about Kenneth's work for a long time, and I'm a huge Agatha Christie fan, so I was really excited to get to work on one of her stories. So it didn't take a huge amount of persuading for me to jump on board, and it was also exciting to me that that Ken really was wanting to do a film that was much darker and more of almost like a horror ghost story, than the ones that he was doing before. So I felt that was also very exciting.
Exactly. Would you say this is your first horror, terrifying kind of feature that you've been a part of?
No, it is not. I think the first film that I actually scored was that was a horror film, also about a house. It was called The Bleeding House. It was very horrifying.
Can you explain to me how you might compose a new piece?
Well, it really depends on what it is that I'm composing for. So it depends on if I'm working on a score, or if I'm writing for myself, or if I'm writing for other musicians to play, or it really I try not to get stuck with one method of writing. So I try to change it up a lot, like how I write. So sometimes I will, write with just like paper and a pencil, and sometimes I will write, with my voice as the starting point, or my instrument as a starting point, or at the piano. And sometimes I'll, record the sound and start from there. Or it's very different how I compose for a film. If we're talking about films in particular, my beginning point is always to look at what world we're in the film, and how the music can best serve the story and the and the whole universe that we're in that film. Because I think every film is so different, and every film requires such a different thing from the score, because sometimes you want the score to take on a leading role, and you want it to be a character in the film. Like, for example, in Joker, it's very much up front, and it's in your face, and it's unavoidable, in many ways. But for example, in a story like A Haunting in Venice, it takes on a more I guess it instead of the score leading the character from in front of the character, it works much more like in parallel and from the subconscious mind. So it's coming with you from the sides rather than in front of you. So I think you probably won't necessarily always realize that the score is there, because it's coming, as I said, from behind, but it will still have a big emotional impact, and that's it's all these psychological things about how the way that music works, I think, with and in connection to storytelling, that I find so interesting about writing film scores is to play with these the different ways of hearing and perceiving music, and how you can be moved by it in very different but effective ways.
And when you're doing this whole process, where is the actual the the scenes in relation to the music? Are you working hand in hand with the scenes? Maybe the screenwriters are you partnering with? How do you exactly encapsulate the sort of emotion that you want to evoke, during a certain scene?
Well, I very often come in very early in the process. And this film was no different. So I started having meetings with Ken as they were shooting the film. So they were listening to my music as they were shooting, but it was music from my records that was kind of that was present on set. And then I started writing in parallel to their shooting based on the kind of outlines that Ken gave me, his ideas about what he wanted to do with the film. And so I really like to work in that way, that the music kind of coincides with it, or it's like lives in a parallel universe to the filmmaking process, and then both can grow together, so I think it's really helpful when to establish the world that we're in, and the musicality and the musical language that's being used, if that's established very early on, it just makes the whole experience kind of grow better together. I think when the edit, for example, when they in this case, where they had lots of music in the or like when they were beginning the edit, they could add it to the actual music that would be there, So it's a kind of like ping pong, and then they start editing to that music, and then they hand it over to me to change or enhance, or then we start working into the scenes, or then sometimes I will also, if there are places where that they require something different, or they've changed from the original motivation of the scene, then I will work specifically into the scene. But it's always happening in this kind of ping pong dialogue, because often it will, composers work in a way that they basically get like a finished film, and then they work solely to picture, and I know a lot of people prefer working in this way, which I totally understand and can relate to. But I think, and for me, this way of working is really much more satisfying, because then I can be I can be a bigger part of the whole process, so the music can affect the tempo of the acting and the editing from an earlier standpoint, and that's really a nice way to work, I think, for me. But it takes a way longer, so it takes like 5 times longer for every project than normally.
Hildur, thank you so much for your insights regarding composing and scoring A Haunting in Venice. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope to hear from you and your works very soon in other films. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.